This is a short description of my history from the 1980s to 2021 now about the reason why I moved from Japan to the US and then traveled around the world to share the ideas such as the lean or Toyota production system or waste elimination and the TQM or mini company idea, glass wall management. Those things I shared in my books, in the videos, and lectured around the world. I think it's interesting to reflect over this 40 years time period what happened, why, and who I am now, and what I'm planning to do in the future. Basically, the idea started after I went to Stanford Business School studying the corporate strategy management and all of that, and got MBA and went back to Japan and worked with the Boston Consulting Group and shared some ideas of those well-known uh, concept like a Toyota production system. But at the time, it was not so well known. And as much as I was involved in sharing those corporate strategy and implementing or sharing those ideas to many companies, I decided to become independent and made a move to the United States. That was in 1983. In 1984, I was lecturing with Dr. Schomburger, who was known at the time, very famous about his Japanese manufacturing techniques. And in this conference, I met two people from the company called the Fireplace Manufacturers Inc., FMI. John Hornsby is one of them, and I spent time with him at the time at the conference room and then become involved as a consultant. And later I became the director of the board also because of our relationship that lasted more than 6 to 7 years after that. And in that time period, I practiced the idea of the waste elimination, but involving people. And one of the ideas called the mini company was developed when I was working with them. The company was probably about 120 people at the time, and it was growing so rapidly to the point that the share price was, I think, 12, 15 cents per share to, I think, $5.50 when the company was acquired 6, 7 years later. But at the beginning, the company was going through a very difficult period because lots of inventories and low morale, and the company was not in a good shape financially. So after talking with John and Bill Harris, who was the CEO at the time, we started to engage in this consulting arrangement, visiting the company once every month or twice every month, and that lasted for 6 years or more. And the first thing was starting the housekeeping, everything in its place and play for everything, and taking picture of the scenes of what is not right and posting to the people so they can be aware of what can be improved. Very basic thing, but the principle that I brought from Japan is about uh, empowering people, involving people, and let them be a part of the major contributing factors for progress, the continuous improvement. As much as the waste elimination with the Kanban and quick setup of dies and many other techniques I shared in the book of New Manufacturing Challenge was introduced, I also came up with this idea of the mini company, and people were very much interested because many people are actually from Mexico, and they have a curiosity and fun-loving atmosphere. So I came up with this mini company idea by sharing, why don't you each of the supervisors become the president of the mini company? Because as much as they are earning lots of skills, I want them to succeed in business and perhaps become a plant manager or director or more further down the road. So the idea was basically to understand the basics of the basic management skills, such as um, for them to see themselves as the president of the mini company. It's not the big company, it's a mini company, maybe 10 people, 20 people, 30 people within this department of assembly or uh, any other press room and warehouse and so on and so forth. So I asked them to practice the idea of plan, do, check, act, or check, act, plan, do, PDCA, as a way of continuous improvement for this many companies' progress. But I also asked them to write down the mission as a group and the name of the mini company that they can come up with as a group, and then develop the KPIs, measure key performance indicators such as quality, cost, delivery, safety, morale, and then come up with a plan. And they practice this, and many different projects are implemented accordingly. And then, after perhaps 2 years or so, I started to ask them, why don't you write the annual report? I remember a case of having a off-site meeting at one of the hotels, and each of them, I think there may be 12 people or so in the group, came up with an annual report sharing of what the name of the mini company, the KPIs and the project, what they have done, and the story of the success, which stimulated everyone. And as a company with a CEO and the vice president, John Barker was another one in there. I think we had a very great time, although many people drank a lot that one evening before the second day. The second day was not as productive. One memory that I often talk about is the memory, I forgot his name, but he was a supervisor at the warehouse. And one day when I was visiting, he was in that little room and reading something. So I looked at him and asked, what are going on these days? And he was saying that, well, today I wasn't so happy about certain things that happened in my mini company, but now I'm looking back what this annual report indicated. So he told me that when I often do this, when things are not going well, it's like sometimes things go up and down, and you have to have some good perspective. So he said he take a look at the previous annual report and see how things happen. And looking at that and remembering what happened and having those examples in the mini company annual report that he produced with the pictures and examples in there, he regained the energy to go back to work. So such is just the beginning of the mini company, which I shared with virtually all the companies I worked with as a consultant. And I'm not going to go into detail, but the element of that is developed at the company FMI. Again, the stock price went up almost 50 times, and everyone's happy. And I still have connection with the people through Facebooks and so forth. Since I wrote those ideas in the books, I was traveling much more, sometimes showing up on the TV. And FMI featured in Wall Street Journal and Inc. magazine and so forth, so that I get quite busy. And I start to work with bigger companies in the US and in Canada, Mexico, and Europe, and then around the world. I produced videos, 2 video courses, and I also developed what I call the users group, where a bunch of people get together to share the idea of continuous improvement, utilizing the skills. And I often shared my videos, and they may have purchased some of the books, and getting together every month or every 6 weeks, whatever the case is. This user group was started mainly in Michigan, from Detroit and then Grand Rapids, and spread out to the California or Europe or into Asia too. So those are the highlight of my days from 1983 to 2000 or so. And by that time, so it's almost 20 years, I had so many visits to so many companies, different countries, and appearing on TV or radio or sharing the thought with the different setting with different companies. The largest one being the Philips Electronics, 370,000 employees and around the world. So I was involved at Eindhoven in the top management seminars and the middle management and the groups in different regions of the world, from Europe to Asia to South America, China, India, and other places that I visited. So those are the experiences of the past. And in my three books, I show the example of those as much as the concept, techniques, and all of that. And they are translated into 12 languages or more. And I still have people commenting me and sharing the idea to the point that I had another a users group idea in Indonesia recently through Zoom. So, what may be the key lessons I learned from those 40 years of experience? In the last 10 years or so, I had much less because I found that I can succeed in many organizations to implement this. So, it became so monotonous in a way, but also it takes some energy on my part to encourage and break the mind habit of the people who may have the traditional way of doing things. And usually the problem exists in the organizational boundaries because they speak different language and different habits are developed. Therefore, the common idea that I bring in with the waste elimination and mini company and those basic continuous improvement principle is a way that we have to digest and work together. But that takes a new way of thinking and a new habit to be developed. So early on in the phase of the implementation, usually that's the difficult time period to go through. So I have to go through lots of pain and suffering on my part because I feel the pain and suffering on their part because they're changing the habit from the old to the new, and it's not easy. So yet I felt that when there's pain, I feel the pain. So I had lots of pain on my side to make sure that things happen and being able to empower in such a way that I cannot talk to everyone to start with, but find the people who are more interested and encouraged and inspired by the concept and giving those people a way of moving forward to be more self managing, then the whole situation starts to develop. There are many approaches to do it. If the top management understand, well, we can start from the top, we can start from the middle, or start from the bottom, and somehow I managed a way to transform the organization. So perhaps 10 years ago, I also got involved in the turnaround situation with a private equity group that I was engaging this whole idea into practice as much as involved in the mergers and acquisition. So since then, I had enough experience, and along with that was my interest in Zen and meditation. So instead of the mini company, I start to look into myself, and I call it the mini me's. As much as mini companies is a element of the organization to link together and synthesize the ideas to produce the power within myself, there's a different part of me. One is more interested in the relationship or the hobby or money or any others, but how can I have a balance and communicate among those? And it turned out that's the same principle. And as I did the meditation and the idea pops up, I realized lots of what's inside of me can be surfaced up. And that's like empowering all my body and the cells to connect to each other. I do this within the mind, but it's the same thing as I have the different organs like a lung and kidney and heart and so forth, and they are not controlled from the top brain to say what they should do, but each of them to figure out how to manage, like a decentralized way of managing. So that corresponds to the mini company. So first, there's a good coordination from the top. Everything is better organized and stimulated and powerful to live life, in this case, with life energy flowing very smoothly without much hurdle. Well, such process is going on within myself from the company's point of view and the individual's point of view. There's technological improvement in from the internet and including the companies that practice interesting ideas like a Facebook or Google, and also NVIDIA and others who get involved into this AI. Of course, Google is main power. So actually, I bought lots of shares several years ago, considering that would be a very important factor for the society to move forward. I still have that as the top portfolio of my companies that I own. I sold some because of a recent hike in the price. But the point is that the society is changing, and especially on the point of the, say, I mentioned about the Facebook, and I want to talk about the AI. The Facebook idea is lots of platform to share ideas with the group of interest, and they are like each group is like a mini company, and the personal relationship or professional relationship, any of that. So the idea of the mini company is existing in that company, as I see it, and that's part of the reason why I bought the shares and was very much interested in it. The Google also had this platform, the cloud and so forth, along with lots of platforms that they developed over time. So I attended some of the course like a cloud, a Google Cloud in one-day course and so forth. In the meantime, AI has been going on, so that I was interested and purchased some stocks in NVIDIA and so forth. And what's interesting about AI and what I'm doing now, partly as advisor to a company and figuring out the software development to address the issue of the health of the people. And what I see there is an analogy of the AI and the platform like Facebook has on many company how to manage and direct the organization, coordinate activities, but with the idea of the mini company concept. And as I mentioned about the meditation and Zen, there's the issue of how to come up with the insight from what you got. At the same time, to coordinate all different parts of me, I call mini-me's, in a harmonious manner. The idea I call the life profile, which mentions the importance of it. Otherwise, we get occupied or too occupied in certain area and forget to the other. For example, we are busy in our brain and forget the heart. That's the reason why I mentioned about the last book, Result from the Heart, pointed the balance or connection between brain and heart. And the idea has the connection to the meditation or some of the Buddhist practice. So I even asked Dalai Lama to send me forward or some endorsement, which he did. And it became the forward for the book called The Result from the Heart. So that we have to use the brain, but at the same time, listen to the heart and live with the mission. So such is the history in 20 minutes, basically, to capture. And the current situation is to have this into the software so that the platform of the Facebook is like a mini company, but a group of people can share ideas in each of those mini companies going through the PDCA, have a glass wall management, some connection among themselves so that they can see the balance. As a whole, we can communicate everything together from the issues of the people to become happy in terms of the mental health, physical health, and how to navigate their life. So That is basically the last 40 years almost of my life and the work. And I hope that I capture the essence for you to benefit from and perhaps apply in your work or in your life so that you can achieve happiness as you live. Thank you.